Hello everyone, this is Nicole. Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to a brand new project for today. I'm going to share a very easy watercoloring technique and tips for you to try using the spray mist and products from Wplus9. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll be using some of the new products from May 2017 release to create a loose and very easy watercoloring project with you today. So I am going to start with two stem sets and its coordinating die sets. So I chose modern peonies and also modern anemones. And these are very detailed, beautiful designs. So we're going to capture those by doing some heat setting with embossing powders first. I am prepping my watercolor paper with embossing body to remove static, and I chose a few images from both stem sets. I'll be stamping them using Versamark ink pad and also pouring some white embossing powder. I love the white on white heat embossed look on a watercolor paper because it just helps the colors to pop out very easily. So after you stamp each of them, make sure to pour over the images so that you don't overlap the stamping images when you're stamping with clear ink pad from Versamark. After those are all stamped, you're going to heat set it with some heat tool. I like to stamp extra images so that I can practice when working with these watercoloring techniques, and also I have enough images to create a floral arrangements later on for the project. So I always like to stamp a few extra ones. To color in the images together today, we are going to use a couple of mists from Wplus9. I am starting with Sweet Nectar, and I pour some of the contents of the mist onto my ceramic dish over here. I poured a lot. You really don't need this much. You actually really need just a tiny bit to create watercolor projects, but I was working on another project after this, so I needed a little bit more than what I need for this particular project. So you have some mist content and you have some clear water, so make sure you have two different bowl or palettes ready to go for this project. I did practice on my first image over here that you already saw. I wanted to kind of get my color intensity going. I wanted to see how intense I want these to look and how often I need to layer them together. So I did practice on the first image. So it's always helpful to go a little bit extra when you're stamping these so you have a backup plan and also a practice round for yourself. Things to keep in mind when working with watercoloring project is that they will dry softer and you can always add more layer on top of each other. Just give it some time between the layers so that you know exactly how you can build the intensity that you want in the end for the project. So what I am doing first is I wet the images with some clean water and I am dropping just a tad bit of pigment using my watercolor brush, and I'm just dropping it and then blending it onto my stamped image. Since these are heat embossed, you don't have to really worry about going over the line too much. It kind of stays within the heat embossed outline, so that is always a plus when working with watercolors. And I am starting with a lightest layer first, and then I am dropping in more pigments as I go. And I'm also actually letting each layers kind of dry before adding more colors so I can see how it would look in the end. So I like to work back and forth between the images because when you're working on the first one and the second one, it gives the time for the first one to kind of dry. And same thing, when you're working on it again on the first image, it'll give you time to, it'll give the second image time to dry so that you can kind of go back and forth and add layers and build up the color intensity that way. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in more colors as I go, and then I'll be finishing up other stamped images. I did stamp the biggest image, like the one that I'm using over here, I'm working on, and to the left side of my paper I stamped a couple of the smaller flower images as well. And for all of these anemones, I'll be using Sweet Nectar image to color in all those flowers. So the flowers are all done and colored. Now they're ready to be dried. Before I let them dry, I'm going to quickly color in the leaves by using some bundled sage ink from Distress Ink line by mixing the ink pad colors with some clean water and creating a watercolor medium for my project. You can easily do so by transferring the ink onto a slick surface like I'm using over here and then mixing it with clean water. And to color in the leaves, I'm just doing a very quick, very easy couple layers here and there, starting with the lightest mix and then going back to the image with more pigment and colors. And after I finish the anemone leaves, I'm going over right now with the peony layer over here that I stamped earlier in this video, and I'm starting with the leaves as well. I have my green color out, might as well finish the leaves first. For those peonies images, I am using Sweet Gelato Mist from Wplus9. I just dropped a tad bit of mist content onto my ceramic bowl over here as well. As you can see, this is quite less amount of mist compared to the nectar one that we used earlier. You only need very, very little bit. You don't even need this much. So you can just drop a couple of drops and start from there and go with it. Just the same technique on these peonies as well, like we did with anemones. I dropped in clear water, pre-wet the image, and then dropped pigments first to create a light layer. And then now I'm going back to the image with just a little bit more pigment to highlight the areas where the petals are folded and overlapped to create some shade. And then I'm gonna let that blend and dry, and we'll move on to the second image. So these are very easy, very quick technique to do when you're watercoloring it. You can spend as much time as you want or as little time as you want on these images and create a very fun and very creative watercoloring results for your projects. So I'm going to finish my second layer and let that dry. So I like to let the colored images dry naturally, about 15-20 minutes. So while those were being dried, I trimmed all of my dies because they do come connected. So you need a little bit of wire cutter or something tool to cut the connectors and separate the dies. And then after those are all dried, I'm going to place them onto my stamped images, find the matching shape, and then cut them using my die cutting machine. I am using Platinum 6 from Spellbinders. You can use whatever die cutting machine you have. Since we do stamp quite a bit of images, I ran a couple times to make sure all the images were cut, and now you have those beautifully watercolored, beautifully die-cutted images to work with. For the card base, I am using Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstocks. I like to have something heavy when I'm working with my card projects. We're going to go ahead and layer the color on top of this card base. So I chose a light gray cardstock, cut this to be slightly smaller than my card base, and this is going to be our card front. I'm going to directly adhere this card front onto the card base using some adhesive. After that is done, now we are ready to assemble the flowers. So I am not going to be using all the flowers that I die cut. I like to always make extras because you never know what flowers you end up choosing when creating the floral arrangement. But after these, leftovers can be used on another project. So it's always good to have something extra so you can achieve the one look that you want. So I like to place as I go, and I like to add different levels of dimensions onto my card. So I am laying something flat, or I am adhering some images directly onto my card base. I am adding maybe one layer of foam tape behind the image to bring up a little bit of dimension. And then for the center part of the image or center part of the floral arrangement, I double layered the foam tape so that it can be even more be dimensional, if that makes sense. So you have a different height and different level of dimensions to create a different depths onto your project. I wanted to dress up just a little bit without taking too much attention from these flower arrangements. So I chose few of the 4mm and 6mm clear droplets that I had, and I'm adhering them and tuck them in between the floral layers using some multimedia matte. Since these are clear, I like to use multimedia matte so that they dry clear so you can see the sequins through each other and then each layers. After that, we're going to add just a little bit of sparkling by adding the sparkling pen onto those all watercolored images. I'm just adding very little. You don't need too much. Just add a touch of sparkle. And we're going to finish the card by stamping a couple of sentiments from the set. So I chose this friend sentiment and also hello dear part, very mini greeting part from the set as well. So I'm starting with the big sentiment, friend, stamped it using some Onyx black ink, and then hello dear part was stamped right on top of it using the same ink. And that finishes the card for today. I really hope you enjoyed today's video and some tips and techniques that I shared. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the products that were used in today's video are listed below in the description area, or you can go to my website at scrapsandstems.com to see today's blog post with full supplies list there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.